Rolls Royces and built marble palaces. They invested heavily in human development starting from early 19th century. So that is the background, and care and welfare got inbuilt into the governance even before independence. Then post 1956, when the state was formed, new aspects which pushed the human development agenda and public action further. One was land reforms. The other was addressing intrastate inequalities in human development. That is a very conscious strategy. I don't think any other state would have done this so consciously, so that you try to reduce inequalities in terms of human development. And then the focus was on food security. And as of now, Kerala must be producing just 20-25% of its rice or cereal needs. Then gradually started social security, both broadening and deepening, which has been continuing till 2017. You'll be surprised that out of the 80-odd lakh families, 80 plus, 47.4 lakh people get pensions of some kind. Plus, Kerala was the first to pioneer the welfare fund model. I don't have the exact figures, probably another 8-10 lakh would be benefited from the welfare funds. So all these people get a minimum of 1,200 rupees a month, and some get 1,300 if the disability is very high. So it's a very, very broad social security net. Then I would call the human development post-96 reached a peak from which we learned a lot of lessons. The total literacy movement, it started in Ernakulam district in 89, and then it was extended to all of Kerala. So that was the first mobilization of people for a common cause. Volunteerism put very in a structured manner for making everybody literate. So that was an eye-opener to all of us. Then in 1996, actually it started in 1995 with Mr. A. K. Antony coming out with a good decentralization package, which was expanded substantially by the left government in 1996 through a big bang approach of People's Plan. And the key features, it was an act of faith. Nobody knew that local governments could function and all that, but let's give power to them and trust them and hope things turn out positively. Now, after 25 years, there are more positives than negatives. The key feature of our decentralization was functional clarity. Who should do what was very clear, and we transferred almost our total human development functions up to the local governments, which means health and education up to the secondary level are with local governments. And we were very clear, the Gram Panchayat what they should do, the block what they should do, and the district what they should do. Same thing for the urban local governments. And Kerala is the only state where urban and rural is under one secretary and one minister. So it's an integrated policy we follow. It's very similar. There's hardly any special thing for urban except some big infrastructure and waste management. So the functional domain demarcation was very, very clear, and health going to the local governments. Particularly the primary health center is with the Gram Panchayat, the community health center with the block panchayat, and the district hospital with the district panchayat. Similarly, schools, everything, Anganwadis, practically everything got transferred. And we transferred about 1/3 of our plan. And that is something which I want you to note. Kerala is the only state in India which has a plan. All other states gave a plan in 2017. We are having a 13 5-year plan. So out of our plan resource, broadly 32-33% goes to local governments, of which 25% of the plan goes in an untied form, which means local decision making, local expenditure decisions can be taken by local governments. Then all over India, decentralization is not stopped contrary to popular impression by politicians. It's stopped by the bureaucracy. Bureaucrats are not, officials are not very comfortable working with local. The success of Kerala, which has probably the strongest organized unions in the whole of the country, was to transfer functionaries to the local governments. So we came out with a simple formula of work and worker going together. So when the PHC is transferred, the medical officer down to the attendant is automatically local government staff with full functional control, supervisory control, ability to give directions, provide funds, so all kinds of things. So they are working with the local governments. And in terms of finance, it was a kind of classical decentralization. That's not the topic of the day, so I will not get into it. But every single pie goes to a local government according to a formula which is weighted in favor of backwardness to the extent of about 30%. And participatory planning, which is now realized as the entry point to the whole decentralization. Then almost, it is not serendipity, the SHG movement, which in Kerala is called Kudumbashree. Kudumba is family, Sri of course is prosperity. So Kudumbashree started, actually the roots of Kudumbashree lie before the decentralization. So when decentralization started, the SHGs were functional in all the municipalities and one district, Malappuram. So we had to take a conscious policy decision. And there we were right, and probably the only state in the country where the local governments work in partnership with the SHGs. And they are not, one is not below the other, they are equal partners. That was put down in writing, repeated again and again. So you are, it's a synergetic relationship of equals. And the way we structured the SHG, and that it goes back to Malappuram, where we said it is not just thrift and credit. It has gender empowerment. It accesses development, particularly health and education, nutrition. So we use SHGs even in the decentralized planning process. So that was a major policy innovation of Kerala. And right at the beginning, we federated our SHGs at the panchayat municipal ward level and at the municipality and panchayat level. So you have a federation of women. Now there are 44.9, I said about 82 lakh families, they are represented in the Kudumbashree. And there are nearly 3 lakh self-help groups functioning now. So SHGs working with local governments is a very, very powerful thing. We theorized that SHGs are instruments of social democracy and local governments are political democracy, institutions of political democracy. And now, much later, I read Ambedkar, who said there is no meaning of political democracy without social democracy. I read only about 6 months back. But somehow, instinctually, we brought them together. And that is the key feature of Kerala model of development in the 21st century. So it's been evolving, maybe from the 19th century, but now this is this thing. So this facilitates what could be called local public action. Non-adversarial local public action, outreach, feedback. The outcomes of this partnership. Biggest outcome is the social recognition and acceptance of Kudumbashree. Everybody accepts Kudumbashree, and it is a status. Yes, she is a Kudumbashree worker, which means, I mean, you are proud of it. It's not that you are a poor person and there is no stigma. Kudumbashree is a brand. So that has been one of the biggest outcomes. The other outcomes, surprising, Kerala has political elections in its village panchayats. So the same BJP, the NDA, UDF, LDF, the same symbols, they fight elections. And the last elections, which were held in 2015, nearly 62% of the elected women representatives came from Kudumbashree. So when we analyze their political composition, it is almost in proportion to their strength in the whole local government membership. So all political parties had brought them in. So there is some kind of what we call political capital emerging out of the social capital of women. But the biggest success is that NGNREGS, that was serendipity. It was not a very well thought out decision. We wanted to get rid of corruption in those kind of public works. So we said, let Kudumbashree organize it. And now we have about 93% of the workers are from women. And Kerala is the highest spender in MGNREGS vis-a-vis its poverty levels. Last year, we spent little more than 3,000 crores, which is more than what Bihar, which is the highest number of poor after UP in Kerala, in India, spent. So that was the success of Kudumbashree. Then, so decentralization, functional clarity, Kudumbashree as partner. A new development we started in this century. We found, of course, we give a lot of functions to local governments. They do everything well or half well. I'm not commenting on that kind of thing. But care and compassion. What modern governance is about. So, destitutes, a program came. Mentally challenged children, with disabilities, a program came. And the real high watermark was palliative care, which is supposed to be an international best practice, rated by no less a magazine than Economist. So palliative care is universal. And then we also gave 10% of the funds which are given to local governments to be spent on this care and compassion schemes, including aged, children, women, differently able. Simultaneously, government also, maybe in the last 10 15 years, very sensitive, this care and compassion schemes for those having ear problems, heart operations, kidney problems. So anybody can approach government, particularly children, and you are guaranteed government assistance. So that covers the whole gamut. Now, of course, decentralization, a very important point to be noted is, but responsiveness has increased. If one of you could do a research on a day in the life of a woman panchayat member, that will tell you what accountability and responsiveness is. It's amazing. I've interacted with them for the last 20 years. I know it as a participant observer. And then a very important point, which I realized through my experience, all this devolution, formal powers, functions, money is all there. But the most important devolution, what I have termed soft devolution. You recognize a local government for what it is and respect it as a local government. So when the chief minister talks to a Gram Panchayat president, it's as a fellow elected leader. Same thing with the collector, same thing with the chief secretary. So this is the biggest achievement. I don't think any local government at any level in India can claim this kind of soft devolution so that they are recognized. And that makes them functions better because we are accepted as a local government. We are seen as a local government and people expect us to be a local. Of course, since you said Kerala model, just a quick minute on what are the issues of Kerala. It's not all hunky-dory. We have outliers. It's shameful at the level of development of the tribals and the traditional fishermen in Kerala, as bad as any in the country. Conspicuous consumption, which has affected our environment, alcohol consumption. Suicides, of course, have come down, but people wasting a lot of money on white goods, cars, and other things. Then commercialization of education and health, particularly higher education and health, which is also quite disturbing. The ecological degradation. You spoke of 2 floods. Probably we have yet to learn lessons to transform, as probably this should spur for a change. Another disturbing thing, I have been trying to search the patterns and components, but I have not been successful so far. Kerala is rated as having the highest inequality in India. I saw it in 2 economic surveys, maybe 3 years back. So what exactly constitutes? But one thing is, even the poorest have something. So it's not that big, but some inequality remains. Now let's come to the recent development, which is relevant for our talk today. One, the public institutions have been rejuvenated. So much so, more people have started coming to government primary health centers and schools. Officially calculated as 3 lakh people coming back from the private schools to government schools, which means this core Kerala strength of human development is improving. And the search for a new primary health. Primary health, by definition, is to prevent communicable diseases. But Kerala's challenge is non-communicable diseases. and also the new communicable disease. Probably corona also will be a new communicable disease, which we are not prepared for. So Kerala has been preparing at least for 3-4 years on how to go out, which means it is reach out. You can't sit in your hospital and address these kind of new challenges. Then, as you mentioned, Nipah, it hit us. Nobody knew how to do it. All credit to the health administration that they sat. There was no textbook also how to do it. They sat, thought through, and came out with a strategy which succeeded when Nipah hit us again. First was too many casualties, but it was contained. So they evolved the strategy and internalized it. That is the biggest achievement. Most of us handle emergencies and forget about it. They internalized it, and that came in handy when coronavirus struck. So then the floods, devastating after 100 years, and local governments. The most surprising act, disaster management is not a function transferred to local governments, but the front line, the panchayat members, rescue, relief, they did it without anybody prodding them. And so that was a next jump in our decentralization by their action, not by governmental conferment of powers. So they were trusted, so they acquired a local government character. So before I get into the Nipah coronavirus proper, the migrants of Kerala. So migration has been historic outside Kerala. So out migration, it has been estimated, nobody knows the exact figure, around 25 lakh people from Kerala are working outside, mostly in the Gulf, and about equal number from rest of India, particularly from Northeast, Jharkhand, Bihar, they are working in Kerala. So a hallmark of our corona work is the respect with which Kerala has treated migrant labor. And the term they coined as guest labor, the Malayalam term is more evocative, Aditi Thozhilaali. Aditi is, you understand Aditi. Government's policy is that they should be allowed to go back under a very streamlined thing, but that can't happen now. So, respect for the migrant. The migrants of Kerala may be bringing in a lot of money, but their living conditions are outrageous. One room, so many people, maybe it's an AC room in the Gulf, but they are suffering and they know what migrant life is. So that is why this cultural attitude towards migrant is quite positive. Now let's get into how this Kerala model can be seen in the strategies we followed to contain coronavirus. Because of the Nipah experience, preparedness. I was very surprised when I learned it at the end of January, that in the second week of January, the health department started discussion. It's possible that people from China will come to Kerala. I don't think anybody even thought of that. Nobody, not any country in the world. So, and they have now started. Today I read a news item saying that if you are getting people back from the Gulf, they are expecting 25,000, but they are ready with 1 lakh beds, which they say, if stressed, they can raise it to 2 lakh beds. And these are all not just general identification, they've actually identified houses, which are lying vacant, halls, and other public buildings where these people can be. So that was the kind of preparedness, anticipatory action which they took. Then learning from Nipah, that is the most critical thing. You go to the patient first and then trace the contacts. That is much easier. And then you contain it, which they succeeded very well in a much more dangerous disease. So corona is much widespread. So they do all this. So all this kind of things they did. And then quarantine. Initially the quarantine was like in Sweden or someplace, just go to your home and just an advice. Unfortunately, many people didn't think of the seriousness. They went out to the, not too much, they went out to the neighbors, some function, to a religious place. That created the problems. The number of cases increased. Afterwards, the quarantine was socially imposed. Very little coercion, but people will say, no, no, don't go, and then put some stickers and all that, which many of us may not approve, but I think in the larger interest, it was done. And more importantly, my wife herself is a medical officer in charge of a community health center, so I know what they're doing. The surveillance is really great. Any instance of fever, even in migrant camps, which are very crowded, they get a ring and they send the people to any house at any point of time. So that is a kind of surveillance. It's not data, but actually proactive surveillance where you go out. Then, of course, now the testing part has expanded. Initially, test kits were limited, but now testing has gone. And then, that was again real foresight. When Nipah hit us, we had to go to the Pune Institute of Virology for testing. And it takes days, and your transportation is so difficult. At that time, Kerala argued very strongly with ICMR and got a testing facility in Alleppey. And then created the core facilities in most places. So Kerala was able to ramp up its government testing facilities to 14, almost one in every district. So that has again been an achievement. Something which is not much written about. In fact, I was talking to a health expert. He drew my attention to this. The quality of treatment. See, they are all government medical colleges. And Kottayam Medical College is old, but some of the Kalamassery Medical College is a new medical college. The quality of treatment. Otherwise, 211 people have recovered as on date. And touch wood, just 2 deaths. So which means a 93-year-old person, 80-year-old woman, and a foreigner. People are talking about immunity in India. But a Britisher, 83-year-old with a lot of comorbidities was treated in Kalamassery. So this is something which needs to be looked into. It's a capacity of the health system, the public sector health system, when called upon to do that. So this is the health part of it. Then the social package. Kerala is financially stressed. Probably it is the richest state in terms of consumption of the people. But when you look at the public finance of Kerala, it is one of the poorest states along with Punjab and West Bengal. But still, government postponed all expenditure and announced a package, then 2 months pension to all the 40 odd lakh people, welfare funds giving about 1,000 rupees to almost all the welfare fund beneficiaries, loan to every SNG member who wants it through the Kudumbashree system, 2,000 crore set apart for it. First day to announce take home of dry food into the Anganwadi eligible persons. That includes adolescent girls, pregnant women, lactating mothers, 0 to 3 children, 3 to 5 children. So 5 groups, they did it. And help to the vulnerable. That is the hallmark of the Kerala. And we can't clearly identify, but panchayats were asked to identify vulnerable people and provide any kind of help. Whether it could be food, it could be medicine, it could be just getting a test done. So this came out very strongly that nobody will be left behind. It's not a symbolic kind of statement, but a real statement. And so far, they have been able to keep up to this. Then this considerateness to the migrants, free food, we will give you. If you don't like our food, they even try to shift to chapatis and the kind of food which they eat. So that was very, very this thing. And then lockdown is harsh. It has to be harsh. We are not all that civic conscious to stay indoors. But it's been extremely humane. When certain harsh action is pointed out, government has responded. For example, the border closure from Kasaragod to Bangalore, which resulted in 7 or 8 people dying, not from COVID, but people who could not get treatment in Bangalore. But first day, Kerala said, anybody for health treatment, they want to come to Kerala, our borders are open, you bring the certificate. So that kind of thing. And in one place, I think it was in Kannur, the police made the person who violated hold their ears and bend and all that. So immediately the chief minister publicly on TV said, this is not part of Kerala's way of doing it. And that stopped. So, and in one place, a remote village in Pathanamthitta, some local CPM functionaries tried to harass a girl not in that sense, where because they were quarantined, the family was harassed. Immediately, they acted, police case was registered, and the people were thrown out of the thing. And yesterday I read in Nagargoil, a child was born, a blue baby was born, and she could get treatment only in Ernakulam. So they got a call, the CM talked to the Tamil Nadu CM, and within 4 hours, they reached him. So this kind of things, they are beyond symbolic. Anybody who has this will be, that message has gone loud and clear. So the dignity part is very, very important. Then coordination, of course, you know what the coordination is, war rooms and top level. But this dynamic planning has been a feature of this coordination. Anticipating the worst. Of course, not all details are public, cannot be made public now. Even I don't know, but they are ready for any eventuality. So that kind of, which changes every day. And then the middle level, the collector. But one important feature of this coordination in Kerala, the multi-sectoral activation. In government, you say, okay, it's disaster management, health, maybe local government. But labor department, civil supplies, fisheries department, every department has been activated. Even the transport department or inland transport. So all of them focusing on COVID. This has again been a unique feature of Kerala's response. Then the real hallmark, which has been appreciated by everybody, a community-led approach at the cutting edge level, using the strengths of decentralization and kudumbashree. So it is led by the local governments, primary health, volunteers. There are 279,000 people who are volunteered to work in squads. Civil society organizations, of course, Ashas and Anganwadi workers, and the self-help groups. So each ward has a 10-member squad led by the elected member. And they are accessible throughout any point of time. So testing from home, anything, get medicine on payment, without payment. So everybody is taken care of, particularly food. So this has been another hallmark. People are not scared. Of course, everybody is scared. Even I'm scared. What could happen? But that I will not die of food, lack of treatment. So that kind of assurance is very important. Then, consciously shown to be caring. You get, for example, the potters of Kerala, very small poor group. They make all the things for Vishu. This time nobody purchased. So government said, identify the potters, we will give you 1,000 rupees. So any group here and there scattered is being brought. So help is close to you. Somebody to approach, that is very, very important. And that gives what I call unexpected transformation of local governments into real local governments. And they have been asked to discharge functions which they never discharged earlier, like supervision of the ration shops. It is not their function. Hoarding, overcharging, violating quarantine. There's a law and order function. All these have been coordinated by local governments. Then another hallmark, which I find is almost unique. The chief minister, you all know it, speaks to the people every day at 6 o'clock, except Sundays. And probably that is the most seen program ever in the history of TV in Kerala. Every Keralite sees it because it's all facts. No generalities, no appeal to emotion. It is all very cold expression of facts. Nothing is hidden. And followed by a question and answer session to the journalists. And they ask, as usual, inconvenient questions. So this has been very, very important. You are assured, yes, from the top, I get it, and my grievance will reach the top levels very quickly. So that kind of thing. And then a very interesting thing. See, these are not, even if they are symbolic, they are symbols which assure of assuredness, which reduces your stress and anxiety. Kerala officially took a stand 2-3 years ago that stray dogs should be killed. That was a stand Kerala took before the Supreme Court. But now, Kerala government gave a direction to all the local governments. Feed the stray dogs. They should not die of starvation. So that is one example I thought you should hear. Now let me conclude. What are the lessons? Immediate lessons. The drill of the health department. It needs to be, can't spend much time these days, needs to be copied and expanded, how exactly they are doing all these kind of things. Not just for COVID, but for other diseases also, which are happening now. Then, as I said, the community-based frontline action, basically for social assistance, social support. The communication which I mentioned now, and then addressing every issue, really heterogeneous issue, that you will be assured that you will be heard and you will not be ignored. The very fact that my issue is being considered, and that gives a lot of relief from stress. Beyond COVID, it's a lesson for the whole of the country. Re-stress primary health, not insurance. You can have insurance for secondary and tertiary, but without primary health, you can't move ahead. Not for this, for anything which India is facing. TB, malaria, diarrheal diseases, anything. That's a big lesson which needs to be driven in, and we forget it as we forgot in Kerala after floods. What are the lessons? Then local governments and SHGs. You need a local government system. Not that Indian panchayats can be great, but you need local democracy. Without local democracy, you can't reach out to the people. So I think this is a very quick summary of Kerala's COVID experience in the light of its development philosophy and development history. Now I think if you have questions, I can answer.
So thank you so much, sir. I think just wrapping up the entire Kerala model and also taking us through what Kerala's response to COVID-19 in less than half an hour. It's really great. Thank you so much. And I think the lesson through Sir's talk certainly has been administration with a human touch because of the range of issues that the Kerala government has been able to oversee and the administration has been able to work. So thank you so much. We'll be opening up the floor now to questions. We've already got a couple of questions. I would request, Tarun had the first question. So Tarun, may I request you to please pose the question directly to Vijayan sir.
Thanks, Meenu. Sir, thank you for your talk. I think you set up the frame really well for the discussion. So my question was around how to motivate other states to deepen democracy, especially both social and political democracy at the local level. So you did mention at the early end of the talk that the potential barrier for this could be bureaucracy. Could you speak a little bit more around what the barriers are and what the risks to devolution in terms of funds and functionaries are, and how could we motivate other states to replicate the Kerala model in terms of deepening of social and political democracy? Yeah.
But I forgot to tell you one critical feature. Kerala's panchayats are large. Their average population is 25,000. So they are a viable local government. It can be a PHC, agriculture, animal husbandry, all these are panchayat level institutions. In the Indian context, it needs a lot of effort because most of the panchayats are 2,500 to 5,000. So viability is a big issue, even in terms of financial viability, staffing. So that's a major challenge. The only way to address that challenge is to have a cluster. I don't think any state is going from a political sense to merge local governments. But a cluster of local governments is possible. It's acceptable to states. That's my experience when I was in Delhi. Now, to motivate other states to do this, first thing is, unlike 10 years ago, now local governments have funds all over India. Even the 15 Finance Commission, I had my doubts whether they will continue with the liberal grant of the 14 Finance Commission, but they are continuing. This means Gram Panchayat should be getting about 3 lakh crore over 5 years, starting this year, or even more from the 15 Finance Commission. During the same period, MGNREGS will have another same 3 lakh crore or even more. So 6 lakh crore over 5 years for 2.5 lakh Gram Panchayats is a big amount. So money is there. Then another important thing is you work with SHGs. So, and then all the advantages, for want of time I cannot get into, not just democratic advantages, there are a lot of practical advantages also. Many of the staff functions of local governments can be outsourced to SHGs on payment, of course, whether it is cleaning, writing accounts, or anything. So that SHG partnership is also very important. Then to expand the strategy, you can't suddenly spread the strategy to all the 2.5 lakh panchayats. So the way of doing it is, I call it clusters of beacons. So NGOs, states, institutions develop small clusters and make them kind of models, and they become schools of practice for others to learn from. This is eminently doable, and I understand that the National Institute of Rural Development and Panchayat Raj has started taking about 120 clusters all over India to try this. Yeah. Then I saw a question, would Kerala share its strategies with others? Definitely, I know that. Just before the crisis blew up, a team from Telangana had come and learned how Kerala tackled the first wave when the 3 medical students from Wuhan got infected. So they learned it and went. I think Kerala will be very glad to share whatever its learnings are.
One of the questions, sir, which has been coming on the chat constantly has been, what has been the specific role of the SHG network, or
Okay.
Kudumbashree as it's called in Kerala?
Yes.
This entire process.
First, the SHG's response was, we ran out of masks and sanitizers. So they set up local units very quickly and started producing and selling it, even to hospitals, private citizens, and all that. So they seized that opportunity and performed very well. Second was, they were part of the frontline teams, going to people, persuading them to stay inside and reporting illness, other suffering to the panchayat. So they served as a link between panchayats and people. Third, they were asked to organize the community kitchens. So many of them came out and produced food. Of course, the ingredients were all given by the panchayats or local donations, and they played a very important part in preparing food for the migrant labor as well as for other people, very vulnerable groups.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for pointing out the role of Kudumbashree in the process. Another question which has been coming is, why has Kerala been able to successfully do the decentralization planning, and why have the other governments across the country not been able to do it at the scale which Kerala has been able to?
See, it's very difficult to answer that, but one reason is there has been some kind of political consensus across governments. So that is a point I missed. See, Kerala was formed in 1956. After that, now 64 years, only one government has ever come back to power. It's all change every 5 years. But irrespective of governments, the core of Kerala's development agenda, a pro-poor agenda, has been kept alive. And a decentralization agenda. It's now 25 years, and I think 6 governments or more. So they've all kept it. So some kind of political consensus is critical. Another thing, is my understanding, Kerala has cadre-based parties, not personality-based parties. Cadre means you have to get elected, you have to go down to your worker at the village level. So when you have cadre-based parties, they are happy to share power with their cadres at the village. And I don't think, barring about 5-10 people, unless they have support from the local political cadres, no person can get elected in Kerala. So that is again another reason why decentralization is pushed. Third reason is that I told you, governments change, but areas where opposition could be strong. So normally 40% of the local governments are with opposition at a point of time. So they support it because when they are in opposition, they can look after their people also. So they are still in power. So these are some of the reasons. Then of course, over trial and error, we have developed a methodology. Our long learning and doing. And government has been open in admitting mistakes, correcting, and has been learning by doing. So these are all some of the reasons why Kerala is doing well. Then of course, most important is a political culture.
Sir, we have a question from Jharkhand. Anjan, may I request you to please unmute Pradhan? They have a question and which I feel is interesting.
Give me 1 second.
Yeah, I think I've been able to do.
The person who's asked this question?
Yeah, Pradhan, the person's from Jharkhand. He had a question for sir. If you're hearing us, could you directly ask the question to Vijayanand sir? Okay, I think he's not able to perhaps hear. Okay, I'll just ask the question on his behalf. The person says, I'm from Jharkhand. We don't have the two important bedrock of your success, namely the strong local self-government and functional primary health infrastructure. In the absence of this, we are focusing on village surveillance through our CRPs. However, we've been able to motivate only 10% of our migrants to stay in quarantine centers. Did you have quarantine centers? If so, how did you manage to keep people in these centers? So that's the question that we have.
We will take care of it. So these two assurances were conveyed. And since we have local teams, see, but this assurance is not just by collector or anything. It is by the chief minister of the state publicly through the TV. So that carries a lot of things. Then there was a problem near Changanacheri in Kerala, where some workers came out almost protesting, saying that we want to go back. Then the collector and SP went to them, talked to them in Hindi and conveyed this. So this kind of feeling that we are not just lost, we can talk to somebody, even if we have frustrations. That is very critical. It's not that you can say we'll give you food and all that. It is given, there is some, that is the most critical point. I want to re-stress. There is a point of reference, the panchayat to which you can go. If panchayats can't settle, they have the freedom to talk to higher levels.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that. We have another question coming in from Joseph K. Anthony. His question is there any explanation why Kerala, in spite of the failure of its industries, commodity sector and slackening of the Gulf boom, has not witnessed any major slackening of its economic growth?
See, one, of course, internally, IT has been catching up, tourism has been catching up. That's been doing fairly well. Of course, this year will be a disaster in all sectors. And there are studies by the Center for Development Studies. Contrary to popular impression, the Gulf boom has not really plummeted. Maybe a little bit of ups and downs. Now we don't know. But so far, that has really not come down. Then another area is more futuristic. Now probably is much more possible. Kerala's health system has now been understood by everybody. And the frontline worker of the Kerala health system is a nurse. This has been understood. And I think there's huge demand for nurses all over the world, particularly in Western Europe, Canada, US may not be very, Japan. So, and Keralites don't mind going. So this is again a possible thing in the near future.
Thank you, sir. Another question we have is from Prasid. He's asking, how do you monitor the spending of the 25% unrestricted funding for panchayats? What are the accountability mechanisms in place?
Accountability, of course, they draw the money from the treasury, all the systems are pakka, there is electronic accounting. So those things are there. But much more than that is the process of planning, which is quite participatory. And the local knowledge of people, which I tell Arna Roy madam, that we may not have much good social audit in Kerala in the formal sense, but there is a concurrent silent social audit by people because they know what their panchayats are doing, who is doing what, who is doing favoritism, nepotism, corruption, who is doing well. That is a kind of a active citizenry, which is probably the biggest accountability enforcing system. Formal systems are quite well organized. And we also, the only state in the country to have an ombudsman, which is real power, not an advisory kind of ombudsman. They can even unseat a mayor if mayor is found of guilty malfeasance, and who is a retired High Court judge.
Yeah, we have a question from Devanshi Joshi. She's asking, what are the strategical planning the state has been able to make for motivating ASHA workers and all the bottom level workers in this COVID-19 situation? Or are they self-motivated?
Some extent self-motivation, but ASHA worker is not seen as a lower grade worker. They are part of the health system. They're integrated into the hospital system. So they feel they are like a nurse. Maybe they are not paid well. And then they work in teams. They are not loners, especially in this kind of situations with the primary health center, with the Kudumbashri, with the Panchayat system. So since they are part of a team and part of a system, motivation level and performance incentives are there.
Got it. The next question is with respect to the migrant worker terminology, which you spoke about, as they're called guest workers. The question from Gayatri is, when we are referring to them as guest workers, are we not then saying you are guest here and you do not have rights like other citizens in the state? Will not that be a concern around lack of acceptance of guests at home in spite of being there for many years?
Because yesterday, something which we are all ingrained, Kerala has been hosting people for more than 2000 years. More than any part of the world, not India. Maybe Rome and others did it, Egypt did it. So guest is not, in that sense, a guest in Kerala. You are a welcome. You know, the Sanskrit word aditi means I have to be very kind, extra polite, even do some sacrifice for you. It is in that sense they were called guest workers. Otherwise, a guest room is somebody comes and goes, you are rootless. That it is not in that sense. You have to be respected, you have to be integrated, which means you have to be looked after when you need. That is not just a theory. People have actually expressed it several times.
Great. Thank you, sir. This is a follow-up question to the question about decentralization and accountability, which Prasid had raised in a while. This is a question from Mayur. He's asking, how do you ensure accountability and consensus in this entire process? How has that been ensured in Kerala?
Accountability, I told you, is fairly clear. The sharpest accountability is electoral accountability. If people are silent for 5 years, they will ensure that a non-performing member is thrown out, irrespective of his or her political strength. That has been a common feature of elections since 2000. It has been analyzed also. So that accountability is quite strong. Then at the village level, as I told you, write out a life in a day of a woman panchayat member. They approach, you can't run away. You can't act high and mighty. You have to respond. So responsiveness is another form of accountability. What is the other question? Second part of the question.
He was asking about how do you build consensus?
Consensus is basically political kind of consensus. In fact, as a person deeply involved in the process, I am little worried at the extra consensus. Now, if you go to a panchayat with 14 CPM members and 1 Congress member, that Congress member will get 1/15 of the funds. Though even if he's given 0, nothing can be done. So that kind of consensus may not be very good for development, but for local development, it is good.
Great. Thank you, sir. I think I'm missing on a lot of questions in between. Really sorry for that. So it's not been done intentionally. So moving on to the next question. This is a question from Rajita. She's asking, taking a cue from Kerala's preparedness, can you suggest some takeaways for other states to deal with the post-lockdown systemic shock, especially for migrant and other vulnerable groups?
See, one is, as I said, heterogeneity of the thing, you understand. Now, you can't collect the data at this point of time. But you go to a panchayat, they know these are the persons. Like I gave you the example of potters, the traditional fishermen. So in all states, you know, these are the groups which are worst suffering. And beyond the initial free ration and free food kits and all that which we gave, and 1,000 rupees grant in aid, then gradually bringing them into the mainstream. So now they have allowed fishing by the small vessels. So they'll not get big catches, but some livelihood. Similarly, from the farm to the market linkages. And even government is helping because many traders may not go. So this starting small and focusing on the local market looks an effective strategy. Otherwise, it's impossible to kickstart because the whole world is down. So you can't export and all on a sudden.
Got it, sir. I think it's something on the lines, it's a question coming from Kunal. He's asking, I think it's just perhaps not in the context of COVID-19 itself. How can the local governments ensure livelihood issues of the poor daily wage earners in the villages? Of course, apart from the MGNREGA scheme, which is working.
See, in Kerala, I told you they get about 25% of the plan. Out of which 30% has to be spent on the productive sector, which means it's essentially agriculture and small micro local enterprises. So local governments do a lot of help beyond MGNREGA. So a lot of money goes into agriculture, helping farmers, small farmers, marginal farmers, land development. So that agricultural livelihood, they are in a big way. But micro enterprises are not that easy. So Kudumbashree comes in with a bit of technical expertise, setting up joint micro enterprises of women. So these are the two main areas of livelihood, though many local governments are into the skilling also. And skilling mostly for jobs in the Gulf.
Right. Thank you, sir. We have a question from Shriji Kurup. The question is, Kerala has only one common biomedical waste treatment facility for its 14 districts. How does the state deal with the threats on its COVID-related biomedical waste management, especially dealing with collection, transport, and treatment of possible infected waste from suspect cases quarantined at homes?
So now that is in Palakkad. One practical problem in Kerala is people are very sensitive and we have high density of population. It will be impossible to locate another area for this. We all know it is, but fortunately it's located in the central Kerala, and this has evolved over 15, 20 years. Now the drill is perfect, from which how to collect, transport, and safety. So they have been doing it from nook and corner of Kerala, both public and private hospitals. So far it has not been a major issue. And COVID situation, fortunately, has not increased. Because if the cases increase and you have a lot of PPEs discarded every day, gloves and masks, then of course it's going to be a challenge. But so far, it's not there.
Right. So we are nearing 10 o'clock and
Yes.
there's been a lot of questions. Should we take those questions or put a hard stop at 10 a.m.?
But you have to stop at 10?
Yes, sir. So we'll just perhaps take one. We will take one final question.
Sorry, Meenu, if sir is okay with it, we could maybe extend the session by a few minutes as well, sir, if that's okay.
I have no problem. I have no problem.
Yeah, Meenu, let's go ahead then.
Okay, great. Then that's not a problem. Okay. This is a question from Amit. He's asking, what are the strategies which must be taken post-COVID-19 for agriculture and livelihood generation, especially in rural areas?
One is, since 60% of MGNREGAs is for agriculture, except the routine cultivation and other activities you can do. Go to the farmer and do some micro capital investment in agriculture for the initial days. Then the farm to market linkages, initially local markets only, can't go to the big markets now. That can be facilitated locally by the official dam and wherever panchayats are there, panchayats. So that will be a small but organic rooted start to agricultural activities.
Right. Thank you, sir. The next question we have is from Chris. She's asking, with decentralization comes great responsibilities. How has the local government taken up that responsibility and accountability? What has been the underlying culture in Kerala? That's her question, sir.
See, one is local governments are well supported with officials. See, a panchayat has a doctor, agriculture graduate, a veterinary doctor, and all that, and a gazetted officer as a panchayat secretary, equivalent to BDO almost. So the official support is very much there, so you're not lost. Then the Kerala Institute of Local Administration, I would rate is the best in the country in terms of training local governments, elected representatives, probably best in South Asia or best in third world. They know how to train, gained over 20 years, 25 years of experience. And then the culture of asking, like when I was secretary, I used to get about 50, 60 calls every day from a panchayat president, not for any shivarish. They'll say, sir, this problem is there, how do you handle? So they are free to call many people around, including the secretary, and clarify whatever they want. So it's a ready health system, almost online. So these are some of the ways that they can cope with the additional responsibilities.
Right. We have a question. Sorry, I'm not clear about who the person is, but the question is on decentralization again. Did the state government engage in any capacity building and provide guidance through SOPs and operational manuals to the local government?
Yes,
Or was
yes,
it
very
left
much.
to the local bodies?
Yeah. Now, if you go to the KILA website, they have a fantastic you should all go through it, on what local governments can do for COVID. There are 9 presentations, which are now in the public domain. And I think the English translation has also been given. So they reach out. And the Kerala model of capacity building is immediately after the elections, you give a core package. Then there are waves of training. There is flood, what do you do for disaster management? There is COVID, what do you do for COVID management? So they come at the moment, circumstance related, but basically quick.
Right. Thank you, sir. We have a question from Rishabh Biswas. He's asking, sir, while undertaking the decentralization process, is it important that a bottom to top policy framework is adopted in order to understand the micro level situation better?
Not in a very formal sense, but the secretaries and others keep in touch with panchayats, and panchayats give a lot of feedback. But policy making in the local self-government department, which looks after about 1/3 of governance, development governance, is essentially based on bottom-up feedback. Is a response to issues. And now other departments also, like many ministers have a talk with the panchayats to get a formal or informal feedback. That is rooted, but not a formal bottom-up policy-making system.
Gotcha. Thank you, sir. So this question is from Kiran. She's asking, you mentioned environmental degradation as one of the issues which the state is facing. What are the strategies which is taken by Kerala in regard to river and water body pollution control and management?
Unfortunately, we can't say that we have an active strategy as we have in other sectors, but we have created what is called Green Kerala Mission, Haritha Kerala Mission, which is tasked with reviving water bodies. And they have some limited achievement in participatory river management in Trivandrum, Pathanamthitta, Alleppey, 2-3 districts they have started. It's a very small beginning, not up to the matching up to the issues involved.
Thank you, sir. We have a question coming in from Manish. He's asking, given the nature of crisis, should governments in India consider moving to universal basic income as the basic livelihood security? Maybe merge subsidies and conditional cash transfers across various programs.
Rid of NREGA. I can't explain. Without getting rid of NREGA, you can have a universal basic income. It may help, especially in what I call diffused economic stimulus. Yeah, you are. I'll respond to a question which I saw, that is data privacy issues. Now, of course, the opposition has kicked up a row on some data entry, but that is a very minor, insignificant thing. Data privacy could be an issue because at the moment, it is all on focused on preventing this disease and saving those who have got. You collect a lot of data, and unless you are very careful, privacy issues could come up. I think government is aware of that, but what action they are taking, I don't know the detail, but it is an issue. It is an issue. And not only data privacy, the families stigmatizing is also a big issue, problem. So many quarantine people have complained, no, people stigmatize, remove those things and all that.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Yeah, because it was a major point of discussion yesterday in the state with respect to sprinkler. Right. We have a question which is coming in from Sandeep. He's asking that the local governments, even when they're getting funds, they might not be able to utilize it. How do you manage this issue in Kerala?
We have found that local government expenditure is around 70 to 80% in a year. which is not bad. If you take national expenditures, it all comes to 80, 85 only. Then they have a process of plan preparation, process of expenditure. There's a concept called implementing officer. They will ask the PHC medical officer to do the health expenditure. They will ask the engineer to do the road expenditure. So they what they call implementing officers under local governments. Through the system, it is functional. Not too bad. Initially, we had a lot of problems in expenditure.
Got it. Thank you, sir. We perhaps can take 1 or 2 more minutes for questions. Yes, this is a question from Madhuri. She's asking, is there any plan to avoid dropouts from the education system? I think, yeah.
Dropout in Kerala is practically zero, up to standard 10 or 12. It's very, so now our focus is most on quality of education. So dropout is not an issue at all.
Right. Perhaps I think this could be the final question, unless someone has any, okay, I think Madhuri
yeah, this
was
is the current
asking
situation. Even after the flood, UNICEF had done a study. People didn't go to school for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but they all went back to schools. Nobody got dropped out permanently.
Right. This is a question. Okay, I think this is a question from Kiran. Kiran is asking, what is Kerala doing about mental health as an issue?
Okay. Mental health is an issue, and that has been engaging the attention of government, particularly recently. And Kerala government got into a partnership with Banyan, the Chennai-based NGO, to take out people from hospitals and take them back to their families, or again, their home again thing. So that is gradually expanding. Now it is there in 3 mental hospitals. Is in Guruvayur. Now one whole district is likely to be taken up. So that community-based rehabilitation is being followed. Then of course there are a lot of, even Kudumbashree has got counseling centers. So 44 lakh women, they can go to counseling centers of Kudumbashree. Then government also runs other counseling centers.
Got it. I think we'll close it here. There are still a lot of questions going on and I feel it might not end anytime soon. So unfortunately, I'll have to take the hard call and press the stop button here. So thank you so much, sir, for joining us today. I reached out to sir like only 3 days back and I asked him, sir, could you just deliver a small talk for us? At that time, of course, I don't think any of us were prepared for such a big gathering also. And sir was very kind enough. He got back to me in like literally 15 minutes and he said, yes, I'm ready to do the call, which was a surprise. I thought my message won't be seen by server. So thank you so much, sir, for joining us today, for patiently taking us through the Kerala model about how the state has been able to fight this crisis and also being very patient with all the questions and answering it in detail. Thank you for joining. On behalf of the Indus Action team, I would like to extend a heartfelt thank you to you. We are in Indus Action have also been trying to see how we could play a role in during COVID relief. We've been running our helplines across the country to make sure that there is last mile delivery of services and ensure the delivery of welfare stimulus to the most vulnerable citizens. Thank you, sir. And thank you to everyone who's joined us today. I think we've had like a lot of guests coming in from elsewhere as well, not just from the Indus Action team. So thank you. And I'm sorry that I missed on a lot of questions in the crowd. So thank you. Sir, if you have any
thanks a lot.
for us.
I enjoyed it. And I can even leave with an offer. If you're doing something specific and you want some advice, you can talk to me. I can talk to a lot of people here and get back to you. If you're doing something very specific.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay.
And
Thank
it's
you.
great to close on that note. Thank you, everyone, and hope you all have a great day ahead. Thank you, sir. Thank you once again.
Thanks. Welcome.